I'm Vanessa Canby, and I'm about to go and talk to Emmanuel from M&O Law Consult about everything you need to know about buying land and property here in Ghana. I've heard numerous horror stories of people building houses, losing their land, buying flats from developments, the development lands having an issue. So we need to do it properly if we are buying land and buying property. So definitely stay tuned, and please do hit that subscribe button to help me grow and continue making these videos. I'm here with Emmanuel from M&O Law Consult. Thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find out, so many people have questions about land, property, and the legalities of buying here in Ghana. So would you be able to give me a brief oversight about buying land here?
Sure.
Property?
Sure, okay, that's a good question. It's a question that keeps coming up. So essentially, if you want to buy land in Ghana, you need to identify who owns that particular piece of land. So in Ghana, the entities that own land are stools. So about 60 to 70% of the lands in Ghana are owned by stools. And then families also own lands, and the government owns lands in Ghana, and individuals and corporate entities also own lands in Ghana. Most of the lands that are owned by government are compulsory acquired lands. So these are family lands or stool lands that government has acquired. So if you want to buy land, for instance, from government, sometimes it's important to do your due diligence to find out if government paid compensation for the acquisition. Because if government did not pay compensation for the acquisition, the original owners can come for their land at any time. Yes, and also when it comes to the entities, that is those who can sell land, each of them have their own way of selling land. So the way the stool will sell land is not the same way a family would sell land. It's not the same way a corporate entity would sell land. So for instance, when it comes to stool land, you would need to buy the land from the chief, and you'd also need the chief to get the consent and concurrence of the principal elders of the stool in order to make the grants valid. In addition to that, you would also need the consent of the traditional council in order to make the grant valid. So the traditional council is the entity that comprises of the chief, the sub-chiefs, and the lesser chiefs. And then you'd also need Lands Commission's consent. If you don't have all of these consents, the grant is not valid. In fact, the grant is void. It's only the traditional council consent that makes the grant voidable. And voidable means that if a party says that you should have gotten this consent and you fail to obtain it, it can go to court and have the grant set aside. So.
And then, with family, if you're buying from family, what's the procedure?
So
then?
with family lands too, you buy from the head of family with the consent and concurrence of the principal members of the family. So with family land, families in our settings are huge. Mm-hmm. These are huge families. So within even one family, you could have factions. So these principal members of the family represent the various factions within the family. Okay. You get it?
That makes sense.
Exactly. So if you go and deal with the wrong faction, that represents to you that we are the ones who have power to sell these family lands, and they sell it to you, and you go and you deal with the head of family of that faction and the principal members of that family, and that land is sold to you. That grant is also not valid, because you would need to identify who the head of the entire family is, and then you would also have to get that head to give you the grant with the consent and concurrence of the principal members of the family. So that's the only way you can get a valid grant from a family. When it comes to so with regards to family land, and one member of the family cannot sell land to you.
Okay.
Because it's not possible. It belongs to the family. Then with corporate entities, let me just say corporate entities. With corporate entities, you need to buy the land in accordance buy it, or the corporate entity must sell it in accordance with its constitution. So every company has a constitution which governs how it buys land, sells lands, operates on a daily basis, stuff like that. So the constitution may probably say that in order to sell land, you will need the shareholders' resolution. So you would call for that shareholders' resolution, make sure it's available. It will need the directors to appoint somebody to sign on behalf of the company, because the company cannot act on its own. It acts through directors, but the directors must authorize one person to act on the behalf of the company in that particular transaction. You need to see evidence of that authorization.
So it sounds pretty complicated.
Well, I mean, land transactions, I don't know, but in Ghana, land transactions are a bit complicated and tricky. And and it's simply because we have superimposed different laws on our own customary laws. So before the colonialism, I mean, we had our own customary law, and we were using that, to alienate or sell land and buy land. And then when we started trading with the foreigners, they passed their own laws, and we have adopted those laws. Do you see? And then we also passed the constitution. So our land laws are an amalgam of the constitution, our constitution, the statutory laws, the common laws inherited from the UK, and then our customary laws. And all of these laws are working together.
That's quite tricky.
Yeah, so all these consent and concurrence and all that, these are customary laws.
Right, okay. And then when you buy land, can you buy land freehold so you own the land, or is it always lease?
Well, nowadays it's difficult to get freehold land to buy, because increasingly the landowners are moving away from selling their entire interest in the freehold. So before it was only foreigners who could not buy freehold land, only foreigners. But nowadays, even the Lands Commission, which is the entity that sells government lands, they usually do not give more than 50 years, even to Ghanaians. So because of that, other landowners are also following suit. They're not giving more than a 50-year interest in land.
And what happens when that 50 years is up?
Yes, so this is a very good question as well. So what I would advise is that whenever you enter into a lease agreement with a foreigner, you have to ensure that there's a renewal clause in that lease. The renewal clause will ensure that after the 50 years expires, you have an option to renew for another 49 years or something. Because the renewal is not an implied term. There are certain covenants that are implied in law by statute, but the renewal is not one of them. So if you don't want the 50 years to terminate or determine your lease entirely, then you have to ensure that there's a renewal clause in it. And it's also imperative that you perhaps even negotiate the renewal term, because after the 50 years, you may not be alive. So whoever is going to inherit it, you wouldn't want to give them, a burden.
Yeah, debt.
Exactly. Yeah. So you may want to say that it should be renewed on the same terms and conditions, something like that, so that you are certain what is going to happen in the future.
Is it possible to pay for that next term?
Yes. So when I say on the same terms and conditions, you pay, but perhaps maybe if if for instance I'm buying land today for 200,000 cedis, and in 50 years I'm supposed to buy the same piece of land for 200,000 cedis. Money has a time value. So in 50 years, 200,000 cedis will not be much. Yeah. You get me? Yeah. So if you're able to negotiate that into your lease and contract on what is going to be paid in the future, yes, then you are guaranteed security of tenure for more than 50 years.
Can Ghanaians get 99-year leases?
Yes. Some Ghanaians have 99-year leases.
All right.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that currently it is rare. Oh. It's rare for you today. If I go to Lands Commission and I'm going to ask for a 99-year lease, I may probably get a 70-year lease. But if I go to a family or a stool maybe I could get 99 years. Yeah.
So if we now go into property and buying property, what are the things that people need to look out for when buying property?
Yeah. So first of all, you need to identify who owns the land. Like I said, so it's two, family, corporate, person, individual, and then you also have to do your due diligence. So the fundamental principle in land law when you are buying land is caveat emptor. It's a Latin expression which means buyer beware. So what it means is that it places an obligation on you to do your due diligence. And once you do your due diligence and you acquire the land, now there are a lot of defenses in land law that will avail you in the event that there is a problem. But if you fail to do your due diligence, then the law would deem you to be a person who had intended to act fraudulently or in bad faith because you were afraid of what you discover if you had done your due diligence. And that's why you went ahead and bought the land and paid for it without going through the process. So I advise my clients that look, get a professional because I read the cases and the judges have taken a position. Their position is if you're going to buy land, go and see a professional. When they say professional, they mean a lawyer because only a lawyer that can convey land. Conveyance is law. Who can draft a conveyance and everything is law. Go and see a professional. Get a professional to conduct due diligence on the land for you, and then get a professional to write a legal opinion. Because the legal opinion is evidence that I went to see a professional. You get it? It's not just the professional talking to you and then.
So then if anything happens.
Exactly, you fall on the professional. So even if the professional made a mistake, assuming, and gave you a wrong opinion, and you relied on that opinion, you would have acted in good faith. Because there's no way you could have known that this professional was giving me bad advice.
Yeah.
You paid the professional, and the professional gave you advice, and based on that advice, you bought the land.
Decision.
Exactly, and the professional will be called to come and speak to why they gave that advice.
Okay, yeah. So that's the same if you buy like a house as well on a land?
Yes. In Ghana, when you say land, you mean the land and everything on it, including a building, a fixture. Like a building is part of the land. You can't remove it after the lease has expired. So it's part of the land, yes. So it includes the property and everything. So the kind of due diligence that I advise that my clients do are, one, you conduct a search at the Lands Commission. The Lands Commission has 3 departments or divisions. You have the Public Invested Lands Management Division, which has a history of all the transactions that have occurred on the land. So you know whatever has happened on the land, you can tell. Then there's a Survey and Mapping Division, which has a record of anybody who has attempted to register their interest in the land. So you know those who are trying to register. And then you have the Land Registration Division, which has a record of those who have actually registered and are owners of the land. So if you go to Land Registration Division and you are buying and the person's name is there, it means you are buying from the right person.
Great.
Yeah.
What is some things to look out for? You've covered a lot, but what can people look out for to not be scammed or?
Yeah. But I haven't finished. So the due diligence, that's the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you go out if you do your searches and you find that the person selling to you does not have their names at these divisions, then there's a problem. Then you also do a high court search. You do a search at the high court to see if there's litigation on the land, for instance. Because people will sell land to you and they'll not tell you that they are in court. Because if assuming somebody sells land to you and they were in court, it means that you bought the land in bad faith because you should have known that. Exactly, you should have checked. You are deemed constructive notice. You should have checked, and you should have known that there was a case in court. So why are you buying the land? You are caught by the events surrounding that case. But assuming you bought the land in 2014 or 2015, and there's a case in 2020, the law does not look back. You would be deemed to have notice if you bought the land in 2020 when the case was taking place. But in 2014 or 2015, when you bought the land, there was no case. So the outcome of the case in 2020, even if it is negative, will not affect your transaction in 2015.
Oh, right, okay.
You get me?
Yeah.
Yes, because at the 2015, there was no problem. In 2020, there's a problem and somebody lost their case. But that should not affect your interest. You bought in good faith. Okay. So that's why it's important, because once you do that, you discharge that responsibility. Now, going forward, if the person who sold to you loses their interest or their title to the land, you will not be affected. Yes, and then also one of the most important searches is the land use and spatial planning search. This is a search on the zoning of the area. So if the area has been zoned for residential purposes and you intend to use it for a commercial purpose, and you buy the land and you are going to put up offices on a residential property, you cannot do that. And also it means that the person who sold to you, they don't have capacity to sell that land to you, because they should have, I mean, they cannot sell residential property
For
to
commercial.
you. Commercial, exactly. So, I mean, these are some of the things that you should look out for.
I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and let me know in the comments, have you got land in Ghana? Are you planning on buying a house here? I'd love to find out. See you later.